The second interview with these folks that was, you know what I'm saying, in the Deep South or whatever, they was, you know, smiling from ear to ear. And it was a guy that was set to lead the interview, and my camera wouldn't come on at first. So he was like, yo, literally, I could see every tooth in his mouth. He was like, yo, let's go. I got your feedback from the other interview. I got your resume in front of me. I got some questions lined up. Let's get to it. And I was like, oh yeah, give me a second just to turn my camera on. He was like, no problem, right? So he turned his head, took a sip of coffee, closed his eyes. He was enjoying it or whatever. And by the time he turned back and opened up his eyes, I had my camera on. And the smile that he had just dissipated.
Today we'll be reacting to a friend of the show's video about, he did this about last year around here. He was looking for another job about racism in tech. And if you guys don't know, I dropped some reactions last week about a young woman who pretty much said she was racially profiled in the interview process and how that made her feel. And he's made a lengthy video on this. And the interesting thing is, most of the times we see that it's more dark-skinned people if you're black, where you feel like people are being racist to you. And in the video last week, the woman is more so light-skinned. So I'm doing this to let y'all know, like, it's no respect to person. If you don't have the complexion, then, you know, you're just going to kind of feel the tension and the microaggressions in the interview process. But without further ado, let's get into the video.
So I got laid off a couple months ago, and I've been looking for a job ever since. And I had this really cool interview last week with one of the biggest companies in the United States, right? So I'm super excited or whatever. First round came around with the recruiter. It went great. He told me, you know, like, you the first person I've interviewed. I feel like this is a perfect fit. I'm going to send your info over to the hiring manager ASAP, right? By the end of that same day, I already had a meeting scheduled with the hiring manager. I met with the hiring manager the next day or whatever, right? And it was a hour-long conversation. We went over the 30 minutes, which for me is always, you know, like a good indicator. Like, you know, this conversation was engaging. So that's a good look, right? And he said the same thing, kind of gave the same feedback. Yo, I feel like this is a great fit. And I'm going to, you know, send your information over to the recruiter, kind of the feedback or whatever, and we're going to try to get you scheduled ASAP, right? Boom. They had a little bit of a mix-up or whatever, so it was hard to get the next round scheduled, which were panel interviews, right? So nonetheless, they ended up getting the panel interviews scheduled the following week, right? The Tuesday of the following week. And these panel interviews, granted, this is a global organization. It's one of the biggest privately held companies in the United States. Again, super excited, right? Anyway, they ended up scheduling the panel interviews, and they told me, you know, because this is a global org that you'll be managing, you need to touch base with some of the global leaders. I'm like, cool. And the first two, so both sets of these panel interviews was 2 people per kind of session, right? So 2 sets of interviews with 2 people in both, right? Had that first interview with the panel. These folks were international people. So one was in EMEA, the other was in APAC, and we talked through some things. Again, we went over the 45 minutes, ended up being like an hour and 30 minutes, right? So I'm like, cool, this is good. They gave me feedback. They asking questions or whatever. And most of this was supposed to be like behavior-based interviews, right? And they went off script, and they was like, yo, let me ask you about this. Let me ask you about that. What's your experience with this? And I was answering questions. They was like, oh, this is perfect. You know, hoping to have an opportunity to work with you, right? Then we got to the second panel interview, and these folks were in the United States. But not just in the United States, these folks were in the Deep South, right? And granted, I'm from the Deep South. You know what I'm saying? You can probably hear it in my Southern twang or whatever. You know, I was raised in Memphis. I spent a lot of time in Mississippi. My grandfolks, you know what I'm saying, live in Mississippi. So that's no big deal to me. You know, I can kick on the Southern charm on an as-needed basis, right? Now, for whatever reason, when we started this interview, the second interview with these folks that was, you know what I'm saying, in the Deep South or whatever, they was, you know, smiling from ear to ear. And it was a guy that was set to lead the interview, and my camera wouldn't come on at first. So he was like, yo, literally, I could see every tooth in his mouth. He was like, yo, let's go. I got your feedback from the other interview. I got your resume in front of me. I got some questions lined up. Let's get to it. And I was like, oh yeah, give me a second just to turn my camera on. He was like, no problem, right? So he turned his head, took a sip of coffee, closed his eyes. He was enjoying it or whatever. And by the time he turned back and opened up his eyes, I had my camera on. And the smile that he had just dissipated. I mean, it went away. And again, being from the Deep South, growing up in these, you know what I'm saying, areas or whatever, I knew.
All right, so he's kicking it, and I'm trying to let him get through it. But this is the same thing that we saw last week with the young lady, where she was stating that time that her camera came on, she got the people that were showing all their pearly whites to pretty much not showing them. And so I kind of want to talk about this because here's the thing. A lot of times, a lot of people can identify this. You know that you're killing it. You know that you know your stuff. There's this thing that people sometimes do about black people, and they like to make DEI jokes, DEI hires, and all those type of things. However, most of the people I've ever worked with who have been black in corporate have been more than qualified for their jobs, right? And so the hardest thing about interviewing while black is knowing that you're qualified and a lot of times you're getting passed over, and it's not because you don't know how to do the job. And that is mentally taxing. So we're gonna probably see in the comments people will be telling us to, start your own thing and get in there. But a lot of stuff that comes with corporate America is relationship based. And even if you can know how to do something or even having the money to do something, if you don't have the relationships to get into those avenues, you won't be able to do it. There are certain things that are gate kept for a reason. But things like this is definitely deflating because you already know you probably going to get rejected. Now, granted, this is where you would probably say that I probably don't want to work there anyway. But at the same time, I've been through what he's been through before, except I didn't have a family. He has families, kids, wife, and all that. So that's a different feeling when you're going through a layoff and dealing with all these different things of interviewing and dealing with these people. So let's finish with the rest of the video and see what he has to say.
What that meant. And I knew that meant that he wasn't expecting me to be black, right? And the fact that I was, you know what I'm saying, was not something that made him very happy. Nonetheless, you know what I'm saying, I kind of knew in the moment. I'm like, dang, man, I'm disheartened in the moment or whatever, but I kept on pressing through. Did the interview anyway, and you know what I'm saying, he ended up muting himself, and the other dude was kind of caught off guard, so he kind of took point and started asking questions, and he started, kind of pushing the dude to ask me more questions or whatever, and he was, kind of asking button-up questions or whatever. But he was not interested. He was disengaged. He turned his camera off for a minute, turned it back on, was kind of making faces or whatever. And it was so disheartening in the moment because I knew that, you know what I'm saying, not to toot my own horn or nothing, but I got a bachelor's degree in IT, a master's degree in IT. I got a decade plus of experience. I got FANG experience. I managed global teams in Silicon Valley. I've built IT organizations from the ground up. Like, I got the experience, right?
And I just had to pause it because he qualified himself. And when you hear those qualifications and how hard it is when you look like him to get another role, it is draining. So like I said, people that I know that are highly qualified, they work for the best of the best, and they run into these issues all the time.
This guy just was not interested in the only thing that I could point to, literally, right? From a frame of experience, previous experience, again, growing up in the South, you just kind of know the vibe when the vibe shifted. And when he saw my face, everything was cool until he saw my face, right? And whatever, I kind of mulled over it again. I got laid off a couple months ago. Obviously, I needed a new job. And that was really the only interview that I had gotten. So I was excited and hopeful because, again, we need that. And I went to my wife. She was excited as well. And I kind of just mulled the whole day. And she was like, what's wrong? And I'm like, you know what I'm saying? And sorry, I'm getting a little choked up, but we good. When dude saw my face or whatever, he kind of turned his mic off and disengaged. And she was like, oh, it's going to be all right. And I was like, yeah, for sure. And I told one of my friends about it or whatever. And he sent me a scripture, which was Philippians 4:13, and it said, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And that kind of helped me and it built me up a little bit more, and I stood in my faith. But of course I ended up getting that feedback from not the hiring manager, but the recruiter. He hit me up and he sounded kind of confused when he gave me the feedback, where he was like, they decided not to move forward because they feel like they need somebody with more experience or whatever in blank area. And that one area that they mentioned was related to the question that the dude asked me, right? So I was thrown by that, I ain't gonna lie. But it is what it is, right? But I'm sharing this for two reasons. One, it's a tricky time right now, especially for, us folks that's trying to find jobs, right? It's some outlier things that have always been in play. But I want to encourage you to keep on going because really you ain't got no choice. You know what I'm saying? You can't give up. But on the other side of that, I encourage you to lean in on the strength that God has given us, right? To keep on going. I'll fold up like a church table. I ain't gonna lie to you. Especially off of that, especially in the situation that I'm in. But we can do all things through Christ because he strengthens us. So I encourage you to lean in on that. Now, with that said, if you do want to support, right, I have created my own IT consulting firm, techtualquestions.com. If you or the business that you work at or somebody could benefit from some IT support service, IT consulting service, executive support, anything that you need, please send them my way. Again, jump over to techtualquestions.com. The link is in my bio as well. This is something that, I feel that God had put on my heart to create, and that's for a reason. So I would appreciate any support that you're willing to provide. But beyond that, regardless of what you're going through, regardless of what you got going on, you're going to be all right. Just keep pushing.
But yeah, man, very, very disheartening. So a lot of things I like to do when I interview for jobs is I like to go on LinkedIn. I like to search who works at the company, what I'm seeing, why. Sometimes it's just the thing that will let you know if you got a chance of being hired or not, or are you just being interviewed to say they did their quota. It's like if you're familiar with the NFL has a thing called the Rooney Rule, where they have to interview African American coaches, or and you just say minority coaches. We just say it like that, but I think it's more so about black coaches at the time. I could be wrong. Matter of fact, I don't like to speak unfactually on here. Let me look it up. So the NFL's Rooney Rule is a hiring policy that requires teams to interview diverse candidates, including ethnic minorities and women, for senior football operations, general manager, coordination, and head coaching positions. Now, the reason why I just initially said black people is because, let's be honest, most of the league is black. Most of the time when we're talking about black coaches not getting a fair shake in the interview process or even getting interviewed at all in the NFL, that's the reason why I think that Rooney Rule exists. I want to say, did it become from Mike Tomlin? I don't know. But either way, I'm saying that is how a lot of the stuff feels in corporate America, being black. It feels like a lot of times you're being interviewed to be interviewed. You go through like a lot of different things. Like I remember an interview process I had where a friend referred me to the role. She really didn't want to because she told me the backstory about why she was leaving the company and the corporate culture. And it's not because of racism, this situation, but it's just one of those things to where everybody is telling you, giving you good feedback. They're giving your friend good feedback, like, oh, yeah, we would enjoy this person on the team. And just to find out, like, you was interviewing for no reason because they had already picked somebody. Outside of researching on LinkedIn, read reviews, see what type of, like, ERG groups they have, all those different things, right? What are their standards on diversity? Do they really believe in diversity? And when I'm saying diversity, I'm not even talking about just hiring black people, right? Just a diverse candidates, not only just hiring diversity with like skin color, ethnic group, but also diverse backgrounds and what your job situation is or where you came from. Can your skill sets, even though they are not like the ideal candidate they typically hire, what could they do for the organization? And so those are things that you should have to look into when you are actually interviewing. But regardless of all that, man, hats off to my guy for staying strong. Even though I'm not the most religious or church-going man anymore, my thing was always Romans 8:28. And to sum it up, I just always say, like, all things going to work out for the good, for your good. I mean, that's a summing up to it. But then I say, the good of those that love the Lord, yada, 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 yada. But I think Romans 8:28 is on one of my old IG profiles. But kind of go in with that. And sometimes you just got to realize some roles just not going to be yours. And hopefully the role that you land is the one that you're supposed to land, but you have to go through the journey, which sucks. It absolutely sucks going through the journey, but hopefully you go through the journey, you find a job that respects you, that lets you level up, and, smooth sailing from there. But let me know in the comments if you've dealt with that or how do you think we can combat this, fixing all this different type of corporate racism? Or so one thing, I was about to wrap it up, but I just thought about something. A lot of companies, they use the AI bots on your meetings so they get the meeting notes. They should also be recording people's faces, and there needs to be some type of rule put in play that would say, hey, if we notice discrimination in the interview process based on how these people act on certain smiles or something they make, or have a QA people to review these interviews, to hold people accountable to actually give people fair interviews. I think that would be dope in the situation. But appreciate y'all for tuning in and rock with me. Until next time, stay textual. We out. Peace.